never been able to teach this on camera before. I hope I have enough tape here. What was your name?
Ben.
Ben. Ben asked, what do you do to rehab your fingers when you injure them? Especially if you play a lot of spider grips or cat's paw grips or cuff grips, whatever you call it. So I've had some really nasty finger injuries over the years. One was especially bad. It happened when I rolled with Cobrinha at his gym one time. He did a grip break, like a really weird grip break where he broke my grip on his pants by like throwing his leg up past behind his own head. And it was really strange, and it turned my finger out a really weird way, and it caught the end of it. And I actually had what's called a, no, not a spiral fracture, a avulsion fracture, where the tendon actually pulls a piece of your bone off, right? So there's tendons all laced along the sides of your fingers here, and they're very, very strong, stronger than the bone sometimes. So when they pull, sometimes the actual connecting tissue will tear the bone, like it'll peel a piece of the bone off, and that's what happened to my finger.
Like a migraine in your finger?
Worse than that. It was really, really painful. And I had to roll with like popsicle sticks taped around my fingers for like 3 months because I kept training. I didn't stop training. And so I like popsicle stick my fingers and taped them, and I just rolled with one hand and just used this hand to push. And I actually competed in a tournament in Japan, and I had my fingers taped like this, and I won with one hand. It was crazy. It was when I was in brown belt. And one guy even grabbed my fingers and bent them backwards. It was a mess. But so yeah, I'm gonna show you guys a way I tape my fingers that really, really helps. I would say like if you're having, a lot of times when you play like cuff grip guard, the pain is when you bring your fingers to your hand, right? If you injure it, pushing your finger inwards is what hurts. And the reason that is because there's grooves along on the bone that the tendons line it up in, right? So if you imagine the bone is here, sorry, I'm flipping everyone off, because this is the finger I always hurt. There's grooves along the bone here where the two joints connect, and there's a few tendons that line up and go into those bones. And when you injure the tendons, they're swollen and they don't fit into the grooves properly. So when you bend your finger, they sort of pop out of the grooves, right? And that's what caused the pain and what caused you to not actually be able to bend your finger. So when you tape it properly, you can actually force those tendons to stay in their grooves even when you bend your finger. It doesn't matter if they're swollen or too injured or anything. Obviously, if you have a really bad injury, you shouldn't be trying to bend it at all. It should be like in one of those metal and foam casts, right? But if it's just a sprain, you can tape your finger in this way, and you can get probably, if your finger is like 30% dexterity, you can get it to like 80% dexterity with this tape job that I do. So what you're gonna do is you need a certain type of tape, and it's Johnson & Johnson tape. It's the only tape that tears properly that I've found. Any like average athletic tape won't tear thin enough for you to do it. Let's see if I can get this even open. I don't have any fingernails. So you need a very, very thin strip, okay? So you start with a thick strip like this, and you're gonna go to the very edge. No, I don't want that kind. It has to be Johnson & Johnson. The reason is Johnson & Johnson, the more sweaty it gets, the more it sticks, which is strange, but like it won't, the tape doesn't become undone, like the adhesive doesn't wear away with sweat. So let's see if I can get a fresh tear here. This one's actually kind of sweaty already. This is an old piece of tape. So this is what's called the double helix finger taping method.
Reverse table worm tape.
Yeah. The double helix / Cornelius taping method. So look at how thin I'm tearing this. It needs to be about, what is that, like a 1/4 of an inch, like an 1/8 of an inch?
1/4 of an inch.
Yeah,
It's like
an 1/8 or 1/4 of an inch, about this thin. It's about like half a fingernail width, okay? So it's gotta be pretty thin. If you do it too thick, it won't put enough pressure on the parts that you actually need to be like put pressure on, right? Because the pressure holds the tendons in place like I talked about. So it needs to be thin so it actually puts the pressure and sort of cuts into the skin here of your finger. So you always start underneath the very first knuckle. You start at the top like this. Which side is my good side to take? Probably the left hand. So you start at the top underneath the first knuckle and you wrap it once. Here. Actually, you're gonna go twice around the first knuckle. So you go twice here, like this. And now you're gonna cross over the top, just like this, and you're gonna go underneath, so it crosses underneath the second knuckle. And then behind, in the middle of here, just above your third knuckle, right? Here. And then you wrap it twice around again, just like this, and then you're gonna cross again. Here, and it's going to intersect in the exact points that you crossed last time. So now we're crossing underneath and then crossing at the top again. Here. Now we're going to wrap around one more time, and we're going to do the exact same pattern on the opposite side. So we have 2 crosses on the top here, 1, 2. But now we're going to do the same thing on the bottom. So I cross once at the bottom, and then I'm going to cross again at the top, and then I messed up the tape, and then we're crossing again at the bottom. So what this does is it creates a cross section here, and then we're going to go around once again, and then we're going to cross again. See how it starts to intersect in this lattice here? So we have 2 crosses on top, 2 crosses on bottom. Make sure I have this tape right. Here. Now it's important you do this. As you do it, you sort of flex your finger. And I have, I had injuries on all of my fingers already, and as you squeeze, you'll feel the tendons sort of slide into place. It kind of feels like a popping feeling. It actually feels really good. Because as you squeeze tighter, the more you squeeze your finger, the tighter the tape gets around those specific sections. And then you just pull it tight there at the end. Like this. And you'll see it looks about like that, okay? And now, it's very important when you're taping your fingers that you always use the buddy system. No more flying solo, okay? So whenever you tape one finger, you always need to tape the finger next to it. The reason for that is a lot of times finger injuries aren't just up and down, they're side to side, right? And if you use the buddy system, you have twice the strength. So I like to do the exact same tape method on the finger next to it. Here. So I do the same thing. Go twice, cross over the top. Do a shallow cross. Don't go right exactly in the middle and the top, otherwise you won't get the two crosses that you need. So I'm crossing over the top, and I go over the middle of the bottom on the second knuckle, and then again over the top, not quite in the center, and then the bottom again. Wrap around twice. I think I can make this one look a little better. Here, and then we go back along the same way. Underneath, intersecting, underneath, and then intersecting. And then you're doing the exact same motion but in reverse. So now we crossed to the top last time, I crossed to the bottom this time, and then over the section that doesn't have one, and underneath again. It takes some practice to get it right, but once you get it right, not only does it feel good, it also looks really cool. Especially when you compete. If you have fingers taped like this, you're going to look really tough. So again, crossing. So you're really getting this. This is very important. See how it crosses underneath like that? If it doesn't look like this in the double helix Cornelius formation,
You'll never win.
you won't win. So look. So this is only 2/3 of the tape job. Now you notice my fingers are kind of red here. One of the reasons you need Johnson & Johnson tape is because it stretches. After a little bit of use, you can stretch it a little bit so the blood flow is good and your fingers don't go numb. Your fingers won't fall off. Even if they're a little bit pink and red at first, as you squeeze your hand a couple times and get used to the sensation, the tape sort of loosens up a little, just enough. So the pressure's still there, but you also have a good grip, and you can have good circulation as well. So see here, up close with what it looks like on the bottom. So it's crossing 1, 2, 3 times, and then it ends with a double wrap on each end here. Okay? Now this is really good for rehabbing. Like if you need to train, your fingers are sore, just like this. This is for you, Ben. Now, what I was talking about, the buddy system, even if this finger isn't injured, but this one is, I tape them the same way to make sure they're double reinforced, and then you take a slightly thicker strip of tape and to tape them together. So this sort of ruins the cool look once you do this, but it's really good to protect your finger. So if I'm just competing, my fingers aren't really injured, I'll do this. It helps with grip, and it also just makes your fingers more feel more comfortable once you make a tight grip. It's a very strong grip. So like normally for me, it's hard for me to make a fist with my hands because I've had so many finger injuries, but when I tape it like this, I can make a really strong fist without any pain because of what I explained about the tendons and the grooves. And I learned that from a doctor, so I'm not just like making that up. But yeah, so here, the pressure, it's very important that it crosses more on the bottom than on the top. That's what allows you to actually have the flex here, so your top knuckles can actually bend properly. If you were to cross over the top of the knuckle here, it wouldn't actually be able to bend because the tape would be too tight if you did a cross here. So the reason you cross on the bottom, it also helps pressure backwards. Like this is actually going to protect your finger from bending backwards. And now to actually protect it from going side to side, this is the easy part. You're just going to put both your fingers together. Now notice that my middle finger is longer than my ring finger here, right? So it's important that when you tape this part, you actually have to tape it at an angle. If you go straight across and do it exactly side by side, when you close your hand, it's not going to feel right. It's going to get too loose and it's not going to work. So when you tape it, you need to make sure that you tape it at a diagonal towards the longer finger. here, diagonally towards the longer finger. This has come from years of experience. Diagonal towards the longer finger. You're gonna wrap it around 2 or 3 times, however you feel comfortable, and then you're gonna cross along the bottom. Here, once you're at the base of the finger, you don't need to tape it diagonally. At that point, it doesn't matter. Then you go straight across, twice. Now this may start to look excessive as far as the amount of tape you're using, but if you have an injured finger and you wanna keep training, you need to do it like this. Diagonally, and then you're done. Make sure you press the top of the tape in so it's even there. And now with this type of tape that I have, the Johnson & Johnson tape, unfortunately they don't sponsor me, but the tape won't come undone. It's a really strong adhesive, and when you squeeze your fingers, it starts to become very comfortable feeling, and you can actually get kind of addicted to the feeling of training with tape versus not training with it. But remember, only tape your fingers when you have injured fingers, because if you tape them when you don't have injured fingers, your fingers, like the tendons, don't build up the durability that you need for training, right? And if you tape them all the time, then you don't have tape one day, they can become injured just because you're not used to it, the pressure and the forces exerted on your fingers from training. But if you do have an injured finger, this tape job, especially your middle fingers, which are the ones usually injured, this will really protect them well. Because like I said, if you had injured your finger sideways like this, by using the buddy system, nothing's gonna catch on this second finger and pull it sideways and injure it because the top finger is there, and vice versa, right? So by doing this, nothing's gonna catch, keeps it all straight, and then with the double helix formation, keeps all the tendons in their grooves where they're supposed to be, and it makes for a really, really strong grip. Even if you have injured fingers, you can still grip really tightly with this type of taping. All right, that was fun. I haven't been able to teach that before. Any questions on that tape job?
Have you ever injured like these knuckles?
I haven't. I think in that situation though, you should probably just rest it.
Okay.
Yeah, but usually these are the more common ones, right?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, I've never injured these knuckles before. I don't punch people usually. Yeah, thanks guys. All right.